The University of Kentucky swimmer Riley Gaines has been speaking out about, this is according to the Daily Wire, by the way, speaking out about University of Pennsylvania swimmer Lia Thomas, a biological male, and stated that when the college women competed against Thomas at the NCAA championships, they were not forewarned that Thomas would be sharing the locker room with them and undressing in front of them. So Gaines spoke with Tucker Carlson and was talking about, at first, just the atmosphere at the championships, which happened at Georgia Tech a couple of months ago. She said people just weren't talking about it, and so we get to the NCAAs, and it was at Georgia Tech, and so we get there, and the environment is nothing like I've ever seen before. It was so almost edgy, like people didn't really know what to say, who to say what to, or how to feel. And from here, we'll go to the clip where she tells the rest of the story and what happened at the event, and especially in the locker rooms. Let's listen to that.
And then that night, we watched Lia Thomas win a national title and blow all the other females completely out of the water. And that next day, we came back, and the mood had shifted to where people were mad. The girls, there were tears. These poor 9th and 17th place finishers who missed out on being named an All-American. There's extreme discomfort in the locker room. There's, kind of these grumbles of...
Was he wandering around the women's locker room?
Yeah. And that's not something, we were forewarned about, which I don't think is right in any means. Changing in a locker room with someone who has different parts.
So they just set a dude loose in your locker room and didn't tell you?
Exactly. And so I feel like to have that kind of forced upon us, so not only were we, forced to race against a male, we were forced to change in the locker room with one. And so it's just this feeling of like, what is happening? Like, honestly, like, is this really happening? Like, this is crazy.
So there's a story that she tells there. And again, that's Riley Gaines, who should be commended, first of all, for her courage in speaking out about this. And the story she tells about the locker room, that to me is by far the bigger scandal, the more important aspect of this whole story of Lia Thomas and men in general invading women's sports. The fact that they're forced into the pool with a man and the man is stealing medals and opportunities and all that of course is terrible and insane. But even worse is that they're made to share the locker room with the guy, just having their privacy and their dignity really taken from them. And yet that very often is treated like, like not as much of a concern as what's happening in the pool, what's happening with sports. And that's one thing that stuck with me. I thought was interesting when in my film, What is a Woman, when we talked to one of Lia Thomas's teammates. And I asked her about the locker room situation. It was the same kind of thing. Yeah, Thomas is in the locker room. He's getting changed. And same thing. She said there's like no conversation about it. No discussion about that. Even when they brought in, when University of Pennsylvania brought in the LGBT activists and counselors to lecture the women and tell them that, hey, if you've got a problem with this, you need to go seek counseling. No, the guy who's claiming to be a woman and, wearing the one-piece bathing suit, he doesn't need to seek counsel. You do if you have an issue with it. But even then, the locker room part of it wasn't even talked about. She said, in fact, that the other women on the team, most of them didn't want to say anything at all because they were afraid of the backlash. But even the women who did speak out, they were focused on the sport part of it and not the locker rooms, which I just thought was interesting. There's another point I want to make too, which is when you hear a story like this, these men going to women's locker rooms, we talk about it so much, but you very often hear from people on the right that, hey, the women who are subjected to this, it's up to them to speak out. And if they're not going to speak out, then I'm washing my hands of it. There's nothing I can do. Sort of putting the onus on the women, on the girls who are in these situations to say something about it. And I agree that we do need to call on everyone to have courage. And the closer you are to a situation like this, the more of a responsibility you have to speak out. But it just seems really cowardly to me on the part of some conservatives to say, I'm not going to say anything about it if the women aren't pro. This is on them. Especially as a man, right? If you're a man, you should have a drive to protect women. Like to put it on a bunch of college girls to stand up against the guys that are going into the locker rooms? What kind of man are you? Would that be your attitude? If you were actually in a place and you saw a man about to walk into there was a man about to walk into a woman's locker room, would you say, well, that's up to the women in there to figure it out, not me? But if your daughter or your wife is in there, would you say, well, they got to stand up for themselves? I certainly hope not. I hope you would realize that it's your responsibility as a man to step up. Yes, men should protect women. I understand that is considered an outmoded way of thinking, but I don't care. That's the reality. It's the truth. So no, I'm not just going to leave it to girls in college and in high school to be the ones to fight this thing out. If they don't do it, then there's nothing I can do. That to me is a lame excuse. Well, before you go, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell. And while you're at it, if you want to go watch or listen to my full show, head to dailywire.com and subscribe. You can also catch my show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. So go check it out now. I demand it. Your compliance is somewhat appreciated.